Welcome to the Relationships Inside Out podcast with Doctors Gregory Siebert and Kimberly Murray, licensed marriage and family therapists. Join them on this journey as they explore the ins and outs of relationships.
All right. Well, welcome to Relationships Inside Out, where today we're going to talk about highly sensitive persons, or HSP as we refer to it. And Kim, you're more of an expert on this area, so I'm going to pick your brain today on what this is. Like, how did it come about?
Yeah. So I identify as an HSP, or a highly sensitive person. The way we look at it is it's someone who is sensitive to a multitude of different stimuli, right? So in terms of social stimuli or physical stimuli, so on our body, emotional stimuli, right? It's multifaceted. It's not just one area that we have sensitivity. It's across kind of the board.
And this is like a central nervous system, right? This isn't a psychological, like you're just too sensitive. It's more of the central nervous system response or reactivity to the stimuli.
Yep. It was established by Elaine Aron in the 1980s. So in terms of psychology, it's a relatively newer diagnosis with not as much research. That may seem like a long time to other people, but 40 years is nothing in psychology.
Yeah.
At the core is that that sensitivity, that oversensitivity, right? We don't see under like we do for some other diagnoses.
Yeah.
Where we have apathy, it's oversensitivity.
Right. And how do you typically see this present, in sessions with the clients or everyday life?
Yeah. So it looks different for each person, but some cores are sensitivity to sound. So volume, a specific type of sound, certain music, sensitivity to physical sensation. So touch, feeling out touched. Or I tell people, for my daughter, one of our defining moments of realizing she's also an HSP is she would get in these knockdown, drag out fights with my husband about socks. He'd tell her to put her socks on. She would have full meltdowns about how the seams bothered her foot. And to him, my husband is not at all an HSP. He's like, just put the sock on. Like, it's just a seam. Like, what is the deal here? But for her and her nervous system reaction, it was catastrophic. Like, she could not regulate through that sensation. So physical sensation, fabrics, textures, even when you're eating textures, the sound piece, but also emotions. So high acuity or high, what's the word I'm looking for? Even introspection, but being able to be perceptive of what other people are feeling. And not just like, oh, I can see you're sad, but you're sad now, I'm sad. And I'm going to wear it on my body. Right? Not even intentionally, but it's this really high empathy and thus sensitivity to the people around you.
And just for clarification, so somebody who has been diagnosed with HSP, they experience sensitivity in all these realms. Whereas like some diagnosis, like introversion, for example, I don't think, but somebody who's introverted is more just social, right? So with HSP, you have that to all of them.
Yep.
The emotional, social, and physical.
Yep. Across the realm.
Okay. And what typically, like, how do you see this impacting clients' lives?
Ooh, good question. So for a lot of people, we don't know what this is, again, because it's a newer term. And so it's this feeling of, I can tell I'm sensitive. I get really edgy pretty easy. What's wrong with me? Am I depressed? Am I anxious?
I hear that a lot. They're too sensitive. You're just
You're too sensitive.
Yeah.
Can you just calm down? You're just so sensitive. Or a lot of people question, like, am I on the autism spectrum? Because I can't handle stimulation. Big defining feature here, though, is with autism, we have some challenges with like the emotional perception, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with HSP, it's the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Where we have an overinvestment in emotion.
And also too, with autism, you have hypersensitivity, which HSP, but you also have hypo, the under responsiveness to it. Whereas with HSP, you don't. Yeah. Yeah. And it's very interesting because I feel like it's difficult to really know what is going on for the people who are experiencing this stuff. Like why, and one reason I know that to talk about is from an evolutionary perspective, just as high, like you have like a trait an evolutionary trait that has set up your stress response system to alert for danger. And it's that central,
vigilant 100% of the time.
and it's that central nervous system, right? That's a part of this process. And so sometimes they look at it from that evolutionary perspective, that it's just, you have a trait that has that a little bit more heightened.
To that effect, it's important to note here, it's not as simple as just be less sensitive. Because,
Wait, what?
Oh my gosh.
How many times has Crystal? I'm just kidding.
Oh, he's told me that so many times. Because there is a real nervous system response here. So there's a physiological response.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a conscious process. It is subconscious. It's within the body.
Yeah.
And we have to do really intentional things to bring our reaction back down, to bring our sensitivity back down. Right. So just saying like, oh, just calm down, or just go take a breath. Often a breath isn't enough for someone who's an HSP.
Yeah.
So it's important as we talk about this to really, like, I can't say this enough. It's not a choice. Just like any other diagnosis. If I said, if you came to me and said, I have diabetes or I have autism, we wouldn't look at you and say, can you just get over it? Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
We would honor it. We would hopefully be curious about it, or accommodate, or offer support specific to that. We wouldn't force you into what would be a neurotypical or normal, quote unquote, way of living.
Right.
We would try to honor that diagnosis. Same thing.
Yeah, it's such a good point. Really good point. Because, and this brings up to my next question is, how do you see this in relationships, especially when partners who can't relate to that experience?
Good question. So often for people who are HSPs, you'll notice things like you get overwhelmed and overstimulated. You need quiet. You might be particular about the way things are, what you feel, your clothes, what you eat. And in partnerships, this can be really challenging. My husband and I can attest to this. So there's a...
Should we bring him on here as a guest?
Oh, golly. There's a quiz you can take through Elaine's website. It's hsperson.com. About halfway down, there are 3 quizzes. So one is, am I an HSP? Next is, my child an HSP? And then, am I high sensation seeking? I'll talk about that in a minute. With that quiz, I think there's 29 questions for the adult or something of the sort. I got all but 1. My husband only got 1. So we are as opposite.
Wow.
As opposite as we can go.
Yeah.
My daughter got all of them.
Yeah.
And it's hard to navigate for him. He can fly by the seat of his pants. He can have background noise. He can deal with disruption, and it doesn't bother him an inch. To me, it overwhelms my nervous system so much so that I get bitchy. I shut down. I don't parent well. I push people away, right? Like, I go into my defense mechanisms, my fight or flight, because it's too overstimulating for my nervous system. So in partnerships, it can have a profound impact if we don't know what we're working with, right? Like, if we can't honor those parts of ourselves and those parts of our partners. So I'll hear partners say, can you just relax? Can you just chill out? Well, so-and-so's wife is nice and calm.
You're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yes. Yeah. And that just puts judgment on something that they cannot help.
Yeah.
So I see that come up a lot for partnerships.
What about in conflict, right? Because somebody who's diagnosed with HSP, that conflict itself can be
very much so.
Very stressful.
So tone, perception of tone, right? So to my husband, I can have massive tone fluctuations and he doesn't really care or pick up on it. For me, the slightest twitch in his cheek or switch in his tone, or if I see his hands clench at all or his jaw clench at all, I'm already in defense mode, right? I am perceiving things that other people would never notice. So for conflict, it's really being intentional about, how do I self-soothe as the HSP? It's not just on him, right? How do I self-soothe, and how can he accommodate if he can, right? So not yelling, we're not using a lot of aggression, things like that.
Yeah. Essentially what we do in couples therapy is, how do you make each other partners of, like, how do you help each other be effective with each other?
Yeah.
And that's also understanding what's going on for each person in there to know how to be effective.
Without judgment.
Without judgment. Yeah.
Right. Often we want to just say, like, God, stop being so sensitive.
Yeah.
I keep saying that, but I hear that all the time from my family, from my friends, even from my partner in a previous day in our relationship before we knew what this was. So for a long time, I didn't know what it was.
Right.
I just thought, like, I'm really sensitive. I'm super bitchy. And I had a lot of judgment about myself. As I came to know what an HSP is through my clinical training, it was like I was seen for the first time of, holy shit, this is me. This just describes me. This is why this event happened. This is why I had trouble with roommates or apartments or friendships or sound or seemingly innocuous things that I really struggle with.
Like why you couldn't be at a concert and enjoy yourself. Why you couldn't be at a party and enjoy yourself, because that stimulation was just taxing.
My daughter, movies. Movies are a big one at movie theaters for her. And she covers her ears. So we've started bringing earplugs. And that even like when people are like, hey, let's just go to the movies, and having to explain even to her grandparents of, okay, but know that she has a sound sensitivity, bring us some earplugs. And they say, well, it's not that big a deal. Why? Right? So also teaching other people how to accommodate.
It's not that big a deal. Look, I can't relate to it, so it's not a big deal. Let's not make it one, because I'm not comfortable dealing with it.
Right. It's so challenging. I see this also in like pregnancy, postpartum, birth work, where someone who's an HSP being pregnant is really overstimulating. You don't get alone time. You don't get your body. There's always a sensation of pressure or discomfort or nausea. And so you never get to just get into your relaxed state.
Yeah.
But also in birth, right? Your pain tolerance. Chris and I joke, whether it's pain or if I were to drink alcohol, I'm good until I'm not. It's not like a steady incline or decline. It's I hit a max and then everything goes to shit.
And you see that a lot with people who are diagnosed with HSP and that central nervous system response. It's just like 0 to 100. I
can cope for so long, and then those coping mechanisms don't cut it anymore. And so we see some people slowly ramp, but often it is this like, nope, now I've hit too much.
Yeah.
And for those who are listening rather than watching, like I'm doing a hand gesture of like pushing away. And we see that a lot of like, I need to back up. I need to retreat. I need to get quiet, calm, really reduce my sensations or my stimulation.
Yeah. And we'll talk about coping skills here in a second, because you mentioned earlier about sensation seeking. Yeah. You said you're going to bring up that a little bit. So tell me a little bit about how that relates to the HSP.
So some HSPs are what are called high sensation seeking. And there's that separate quiz for it. And in some realms I am, some realms I'm not. So I'm a really like methodical, planned kind of human.
Yeah.
But as weird as it's going to sound, as I'm telling you, I'm sensitive to sound, like all the things. Roller coasters are my jam.
Oh, interesting.
And you might think like as an HSP, you wouldn't like it. It's loud, it's rough in movement, it's abrupt, it's out of control. There's no happier place for me than on a roller coaster. And for some HSPs, they are high sensation seeking at the same time. It's a way of kind of coping with that nervous system response, almost using it as like a positive, right?
Yeah. Because you're experiencing something pleasurable. So like
you get that oxytocin hit or endorphin hit. But that's not all HSPs. That's probably the smaller subset of them. But it's something to think about, right? So if you're saying like, well, I am sensitive, but I do enjoy like these spontaneous things or skydiving. So how do those reconcile? That's how.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And it's interesting. And would you say the same is true? Like somebody like, I get a lot of thrill from music at live concerts.
Yeah.
But I also am sensitive to other sounds. Like that's possible. It's not like all sounds.
Yep. And so with sounds, I should say too, sometimes the sound is too much. Like it overwhelms my nervous system. And sometimes it is like, it's deeply meaningful or moving, or like I get kind of like engrossed into the sound.
Like the beauty of it. Got it. Okay. Now let's talk about how you cope. So you say sometimes the coping skills don't work, and now you're in a place, but now you're in a place where the coping skills haven't worked. So now you need to do what? Like what typically?
So basic coping skills here, which we've talked about with anxiety, with stress, conflict, take that deep breathing, right? Take that mindfulness, use those skills so that you can regulate your nervous system. Big thing that we preach to both our girls, but especially my oldest. My youngest is definitely my husband, not an HSP at all, couldn't give two shits about anything in the world. Whereas my oldest is, and you've met her, like she's as HSP as they come. Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Tools.
Yeah.
So we are teaching our daughters, if you need to take a break, name it.
Out.
Don't wait until you're in crisis. Take it as soon as you're feeling some of that nervous system reaction. So even if that's at like a social function, your birthday party, something where traditional Western values would say it's rude to leave, it's okay to take that break. Go to the bathroom for 10 minutes. For our daughter, she has a cozy corner, a tent where she can go and it's quiet and she can just regulate her body. I think I've mentioned before on here, for holidays, we were at my husband's great grandparents for Easter. It was loud. And so my daughter and I just went to the basement and just sat on the couch together for 10 minutes where we don't talk. We just sit.
So a place where there's like sensory deprivation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So give yourself the space to reset. Also for HSPs, it's figuring out what are your triggers, right? Like if it's this particular fabric, for me, satin is one of them. I cannot with satin, but finding what fabrics I do enjoy. So touching those fabrics that bring me a soothing kind of effect, or that music that soothes my body, or that food or drink. Find your ways that don't overstimulate you, but actually the reverse, that kind of slow you down.
So instead of avoiding all situations, like all social, because finding ones that are tolerable, that actually you are able to enjoy yourself and aren't experiencing a lot of that sensitivity.
Or set parameters, especially in couples, to set yourself up for success. So I know I'm an HSP. So if we're going somewhere, say for Christmas, that morning, we're going to be real chill. We're not doing anything because I want to start at a 2 when I enter that, not a 5, right? If I'm already at a 5, I don't have much threshold left to go. So set myself up for success. I'm going to take the morning easy. I'm going to wear comfortable clothes. I'm going to probably have my hair up because for me, when my hair's down, it's overwhelming at times.
Like it touching the skin and shoulders. Okay. I
get hot, especially like I don't like my hair touching me. People who work out with their hair down to me are like unicorns. I cannot fathom it. Yeah. We are going to set a time limit for how long we're there. So we're going to leave by this time.
How do you control that too with the kids waking up?
Kids are fantastic because you can say, oh my gosh, Skylar looks really tired. We got to go. Fantastic.
But what about in the morning when you're like, before we do anything, it's just, okay, I need a 2. And then all of a sudden your youngest wakes up.
Yeah. So it's taking them outside somewhere where I know they're going to stimulate themselves.
Got it. Okay.
Or my hubby will take them for a little bit while I take a shower alone. Right. So working as a team to kind of meet that need. I'm not going to be drinking coffee that morning. Caffeine agitates this. We know that. Right. So people who are HSPs are more sensitive to caffeine, sugar, things that tend to hype up the body. When we're at the event, my husband and I've talked about this, have code words.
Yeah.
If I say porcupine, that's my cue of hubby, I need a break, come with me. And we take a 5-minute walk away. That takes me from maybe a 7 down to a 5. Again, giving myself a little bit of threshold here to stay a little bit longer. But the important part isn't my hubby, or is my hubby not looking at me with judgment and saying like, seriously, right now, which he might want to do, but it's not something I can help. Yes, I can cope. I can do all the things and I'm still an HSP. Both are true.
Yeah. And that goes back to what you're talking about. Like, what can I do myself? And how do I advocate for support? Because our partners, again, aren't mind readers, and you're letting them know this is what you need in this moment. And that goes back to some of the earlier episodes we've talked about of just the importance of communicating and asserting our needs and feeling comfortable to do so.
Right. And paying attention to how your partner ticks if they're an HSP, right? Chris knows, for example, with childbirth, he knew bring chapstick, don't drink coffee. His coffee breath, anyone's coffee breath, is so maddening to me. I could scream. I don't know what it is. I cannot. So that day he did not have coffee at all. Chapstick, I don't like my lips dry. So he planned those things. I, of course, plan my own stuff too, but my partner's trying to be supportive and helpful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That he's in tune enough to know that. That means you guys have talked about it, right? So
talk about it, open it up. But I want to say this too. Yes, it's important that he is supportive and accommodating as he can be, right? But 1, it's not his job to always accommodate. 2, I can't hold him back because of my stuff. So there are times he might go somewhere without me. That's okay. We can do things separate. But 3, I can't forget about his needs. My needs don't supersede his, so that his needs are never met, right? There are times when my needs might supersede, where I can't stay for 4 hours at a family function. Okay.
Wait, 4 hours? That's a long time.
But I have to also think about, is he overwhelmed? Even if he's not an HSP, he can still get overwhelmed. Is he tired? Does he need a break? How can I help accommodate him when I can too?
That's such a great point. There has to be reciprocity. It can't just be all about, you having this higher central nervous system reactivity to stimuli, right? Which is important to acknowledge and learn how to adapt, but there has to be reciprocity and checking in with our partners, what they need. So yeah, I love that you say that, because sometimes, and not even just HSP, let's talk about anxiety, depression. Sometimes it gets so much about whoever the person's experiencing that diagnosis.
The IP, the identified patient, as we say in therapy.
Yeah. And the other person is almost lost in that.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't want to lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's figuring out, what is my threshold of tolerance and what are the outer bounds? How far can I go? So if he's having a really good time with his dad and I'm capped out, could we drive separate? So I can leave when I want to? Can I go take a 10-minute break so that he can have another hour? If we say, okay, 2 hours, at 6 o'clock, we're leaving. And he comes to me and he's like, actually, I'm really enjoying this. And it's 5:45. Could we stay a little bit longer? Trying to be flexible and malleable when I can. Know my limits, right? If I'm about to go like Harry Carey on someone, no, honey, not today.
Yeah.
But also being like, okay, yeah, let me see what I can do here.
Yeah.
How can I go soothe for myself? How can I go cope for myself so that he can also get this need, want, desire met?
And that comes to you, again, being aware of what can I do to cope and not being dependent upon my partner to help regulate everything.
Yeah.
So
awareness is huge, right? So with HSPs, we're almost too aware, but it's being aware without judgment. For a long time, I judged myself. I just got to white knuckle through this. Cool kids go to concerts. People love movies. I just need to go to the movie. Now I can say, actually, I don't love that activity, and politely no, thank you. Right. Or being able to say no. We often feel like we have to say yes to every invitation, and
because of how in tune you are with how the other person feels.
Yes. Right. I don't want to disappoint them.
Yeah.
If I can, one thing I could say is learn to say no. Yes, they might be disappointed. And guess what? That's okay. When we can start to say no and set those boundaries for ourselves, it sets ourselves up for greater success, right? Because if I say yes, and then I show up and I'm bitchy anyway, and I'm grouchy and I don't want to be there, they're going to feel bad.
Yeah. Bye, Cam, leave.
I'm going to wear myself out.
Yeah.
Whereas if I can say, like this isn't a good fit today. Let's pick another day or another activity.
But sometimes that play to your advantage. Just show up bitchy to like family function. Like they're like, can you leave? You're
can
like,
you just go?
Gladly.
Bye. But it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I said yes to this, and actually it's not feeling good today. Or today's been too much for me. Or like I said, with my husband, okay, maybe he goes to some activities and I don't. We often think as partnerships, we have to do everything together. Here's a clue. You don't have to do it.
It's healthy to have your own identity outside the relationship. Yeah. We talked about in the codependency earlier episode. Yeah.
And our own boundaries and our own preferences. He loves socializing. I'm the kind of person I like my people socializing for a select amount of time. And then I have to completely recluse afterwards. He could stay up till 3 a.m. socializing and drinking a beer. I stay up till 11 and I feel like I've been drugged. Like I can't handle that amount of stimulation in a day. Right. And it's okay to honor that of, I need more sleep. I'm going to go to bed a little earlier than you. I'm going to say no to this invite, but you can say yes. We might drive separate. We might plan different date ideas, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you talking about this. I know and giving your own kind of testimony to your experience with this. Is there anything else that you feel like is important for somebody who might not know they have that diagnosis, or like how might someone go around getting diagnosed?
So start with that quiz on hsperson.com. Now, the caveat, this is not a diagnosis. Just because you answer a certain number of questions, it just tells you, are you likely or not likely? Okay. So proper diagnosis is through a psychiatrist. The big thing I would say is if this is you or your child, again, meet it with non-judgment. If we can start teaching kids at a young age, whether they're HSPs or not, how to self-regulate, how to cope, how to advocate for their needs, including space, including being able to calm down. We can teach that at a young age. It sets us up for success as an adult, right? Rather than looking at my daughter and saying, just put the damn socks on. Like they're just socks. Instead saying, oh, honey, I'm sorry, those are uncomfortable. Would you like to go pick another pair? Or when we go to the store, Harper, do you want to pick out what socks you want to buy? What pants do you want to buy? Right? Like she doesn't like jeans. So it's very rare she's in jeans. And instead of being like, no, you have to wear jeans to this function, what pants would feel good for your body? Set yourself and your child or your partner up for success. Accommodate where you can. If you know that something's going to be overwhelming, plan for it. Get more rest the day before. Eat some protein. Really plan and prep so you can set yourself or your child up for success without judgment.
Without judgment is the key. Yeah.
It's huge. And people, I've said this before, the phrase just relax, eradicate that from your vocabulary for anybody, but especially here. It's not that simple. And it's frustrating for the HSP because I wish I could just relax. I wish I wasn't bothered by sound or smells or touch. I wish that I didn't get out touched by my kids in roughly 10 minutes sometimes.
Yeah.
I wish I could be that mom that holds my kids hours on end and feel good about it. And that's not my body.
Yeah.
So if you're meeting with judgment and it's paired with my judgment, there we are in shame.
Yeah, and a lot of judgment comes from people assuming you have volition in this, where again, going back, it's more of the response to physiological sensations, the central nervous system response to, fight, flight, or freeze. I mean, it puts you in that state, even for the smallest like sound or as we were talking about. So
think about if there's a food you hate, say it was tomatoes. And I said, just like tomatoes, just eat them, just like them.
Oh, get over it, right? You're being too sensitive. Eat that tomato. And
you'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. That is exactly the same here. Or if you're someone who is phobic of something, it's just a spider, just touch it. It's just a roller coaster, just get on it. How invalidating that would be for you and how frustrating that would be of, I wish that were the case, but I can't.
Yeah.
Same here. So that's my big tip.
Yeah.
Be kind, non-judgmental, and get curious about it.
Perfect. Well, this is Relationships Inside Out, and we appreciate you listening in today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or want to know more about this, don't hesitate to reach out at relationshipsinsideout@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.